Hi there, my name is Chris Jantzen. My website is endevil.life. You might have seen my podcast, End Evil. If you haven't watched it or thought about it, you might have wondered, what is end evil? Well, here's what I mean by end evil. I don't mean we can stop all things that are bad in the world. However, I do think what we can stop doing is enslaving other human beings. I do think that we can stop pretending that we can take away another human's will or choice. And that's really what it breaks down to. Because evil, as the way I'm defining it, evil is the destruction of freedom. And what that means is lying, cheating, stealing, these type of things. Humans, sentient beings, intelligent beings, actively making the choice to destroy, to take away, to enslave another human being. That's what evil is. And we can stop doing that. We can end that activity. We can do it in two ways. We can learn how to defend ourselves, and we can teach others how to, and educate one another on the principles of natural law and how to treat one another. And we can respect one another's boundaries and choices. And we can still organize in a society, and we can still get things done. I'm really proud to be coming to you today on the Shattering the Illusion Conference, invited by James Cordner and Joe Murray. I want to really appreciate what these guys are putting together, and extremely honored and proud to be a presenter at this wonderful conference with other people that are just amazing, head and shoulders above where I feel like I'm at in my journey of becoming a presenter and teacher. But I do have a good lesson to share with you folks. And I just want to briefly share part of where the desire in me comes to help other people understand this aspect of working together, of becoming a team. Is I spent some time when I was much younger teaching teamwork and building ropes courses and teaching both groups of adults and younger ages, of all ages, and being a camp counselor. And what I learned from that period of time in my life was that it's amazing what can be accomplished with a small group of people in a short amount of time if there's some focus and some good facilitation going on. And so what I hope today is to facilitate the opportunity for you and other folks listening to conferences like this and looking at material such as the material we're sharing today, who can start to combine efforts and proceed forward on building the type of world that we want to see. It's going to require a group effort. It's very difficult for one person to make a big impact. Not to say it's not possible. It is very possible. One of my big inspirations, Mark Passio, was such a big impact that he inspired me to start podcasting again. And many have gotten to know. And we put together a conference recently called Funnel, which was Freedom Under Natural Law. If you haven't heard of that or you haven't checked that out, I would hope that you can go to freedomundernaturallaw.com and check out that conference. I did a presentation in that conference called Humanity's Most Powerful Weapon. And humanity's most powerful weapon, essentially, is the power of unity, of our ability to focus, to unite, to focus, and take action in a coordinated manner. And we can learn to cooperate and coordinate with one another once we build trust. And in order to build trust, we have to have good communication. So these are the skills that we're working on as a community, as abolitionists, as people that want to end the dynamic of slavery in the world, that want to work for freedom, that want to work for the principles of truth. You're the right people. You're who I'm talking to. Thanks for coming today. So what I'm going to do is move right along to my slides today. I'm making an attempt to make this a little bit fun and exciting. But what we're trying to do is get to the core of what is really holding people back from reaching out to one another and forming these tribes and communities and groups that we need to make a stronger effort to make these connections with other people that care about freedom. And to, if we trade amongst each other, if we work together in teams, we can create more powerful documentaries or presentations or stores or, anything that right now that we're frustrated with that's going on in society, whether it be the organization or structure of our society. We can replace these things with our efforts in showing how to do things correctly without forcing and coercing. So until we make these efforts, how are we going to reach our desired outcome is my question. Well, what I've realized is the biggest thing in the way of us doing these things, of taking these actions, is really problems in our mind and constructs in the minds of those around us and the people that we want to work together with. And so today what I'm going to do is, using the theme of this conference, is shatter those illusions. And one by one, I'm going to show all the justifications and all the arguments I've heard over the years from everybody when I tried to present this concept and idea of ending evil, of working towards a world where we respect natural law and we respect one another's individual right to make your own choice and to have your own mind on things instead of being governed by the great mind of the governmente. So the only way we're going to do that is by shattering all these illusions. So what I've done is one by one put together slides that are the illusions that I hear out of people and that I see in my own mind and that I've had to shatter. And I think as we go through these slides, it will help you in your conversations with people and with your own constructs in your minds, because these are really the only things holding us back from making change and seeking the world we want to live in, is to shatter these illusions. There's no such thing as conspiracies. If anybody has told you otherwise, you've been misinformed. This is one of the first illusions, we have to deal with here, that people think that there's no such thing as conspiracies. Well, this picture displays very clearly some of the things we know of in the world, of the dialectic between the politicians, of these ruling families such as the Rothschilds, and of the Federal Reserve, which is obviously a monopoly on money itself and creating a debt system that requires people to go bankrupt. So these are obviously corrupted, and this is not a theory. This just is the conspiracy that we're part of. And if you haven't come to recognize that these things are reality and you still think of them as conspiracy theories, this may not be the presentation for you. You may have to come across that decision when you're ready, and at that point you might want to hear what I have to say. But if you don't recognize there to be a major problem in the world with centralized leadership and occult magicians and sorcerers of sorts, even, you could say, behind it all, driving social engineering and making these politicians and Hollywood people into the mind control slaves that they are. If you don't believe any of that's real, then we're not on the same page, and you're not going to understand where I'm coming from this presentation. So that's my little upfront warning. Thanks to whoever made that cool picture. Love it. So here's the first illusion that we need to shatter today. Without laws in government, who would protect us from the psychos? Well, as in the last picture you saw, many of us know that at the top of the pyramid in the world, the leadership so often are the most psychotic people we could imagine. And who else but a psychotic person would want to be in a position where they're basically the person that has their finger on the button that could destroy or kill hundreds, thousands, millions of people? I think the average person who cares about others, humanity, maybe even somebody who would not want to kill a spider and take it outdoors, would never want to be in a position where it would be up to you to decide the fate or death of many people. And yet these psychopaths are the exact people that are chosen for leadership And these positions themselves are already imbued with this negative responsibility to rule over other people and to make decisions that could affect many other human beings, which should not be done at all, really. In a world that I imagine where we work together and we respect other people's wills, no one would be forced to make choices that they did not want to make. So therefore, there would be no meetings where anybody would be able to make choices for other people, other than those who had broken the law. What we call the law is based on what government calls the law. What I'm calling the law is the natural law. So in other words, somebody's stolen something, right? Then they've broken the natural law. And so how do we deal with that? Is there no way to deal with that as human beings without government? Well, that's the illusion, that the only way to deal with these problems is with laws and government. But I'm pointing out that the law has existed long before anybody wrote down laws, or long before we even had pencils, come to think of it, which were inventions. Human inventions are human laws. And government, the idea of government is not inherent in nature. It's something that's been thought of, invented, come up with. And has it worked well? We look at the evidence. The pictures I show here are showing almost all the pictures in my presentation are sort of a juxtaposition. On one side, we see the destruction that government and laws can bring about, which is massive destruction of cities and countries and bombs being dropped, huge wars. That comes from having huge governments and having huge entities that are allowed to grow to that size because they're allowed to have their laws, which they use to grow to that size, right? To govern themselves and to create their boundaries. It also requires getting, how do you stop it? How do you stop it from growing bigger and bigger? Well, there's no stop on something that doesn't have its own mind. So we look at the other part of this picture and we see the weapons of destruction or the weapons of protection, depending on how you look at it. Many people that see the Constitution as a very important, the ideals in the Constitution, which I do agree with those ideals, recognize that the tools we have available to us, whatever they be in technology, whatever type of weapon we're discussing, are always ours to use to protect the average human being, to protect ourselves, never to oppress, never to force, only to protect and to defend. We have all these tools with or without governments, with or without laws, the same tools exist. The question is, do we have most intelligent enough people to keep good track of these tools and keep them organized? Can we do this without force? Can we do it in a spirit of self-defense? Well, I'm sure it's possible. And I'm sure if you really think about it, you'll realize that in time, in history, before we had pencils, before we had computers, before we had man-made laws, before we had man-made government, we had survival. And people did survive through all those times. In fact, there wouldn't be so many people now on the earth had we not survived and thrived. So that in itself is proof that previously in time, people had it figured out without man-made laws and government. Moving on to our next slide. There's just not enough time. We all go through the frustration of feeling like it's too late, like we've been trying and it's just not working, or we have so much to learn. Often the thing I stress about is I just have so much to learn and I feel so far behind that, part of me wants to be the person on the picture on the one side of this, sitting there in front of the television, just switching the channels as the hours go by. But I feel the pressure and the responsibility that it is an important time in history, that there is a lot happening and there's a lot that needs to be done and taken care of. So is it too late to change things anyway? Are you a person that wants to make your decisions based on a feeling of bitterness or fear or anxiety? Whenever in life we can experience these moments when we're full of anxiety and we're feeling the pressure, that's when we tend to make little mistakes and bump into a wall or cut ourselves because we're trying to go too quickly, or trip, right? Or forget something important. So it's important in this journey, what we're discovering, which is how to become freedom activists in the modern age, how to become people who fight for the abolition of slavery, people who fight for what's right, right? There's going to be this constant pressure to just chill out and watch TV and change the channel because there's so many channels to look at. But there is a pressure upon us, and if you're not feeling that within your own soul and your own heart, then I don't think you've paid enough attention to what's going on, because there's children that are literally being the worst things you can imagine being done to them by the moment, because no one's stopping the atrocities in the world, because people aren't working hard enough as groups, as teams, as tribes, as individuals to change things. So this is my slide to point out that the illusion that it's too late does not relieve you of your responsibility as a human being who's part of the great intelligence, who's part of the great one, to be a good human being and protect the future of other children. Many of you have children and hope to have grandchildren, or already do. Then it's even more imperative that you'd spend whatever time possible educating the young people, working towards teaching what is really going to change things in the future. And that is being moral human beings, understanding natural law, and working together on educating other people that is what's going on, and that we are being ruled by a very small percentage of evil psychopaths in the world. And all we have to do is learn how to defend ourselves and protect ourselves from being convinced by evil that it's okay to take away other people's rights, that it's okay to be part of governments and police forces and to tax people, just like the tax collectors in the Robin Hood days. We need to change this dynamic. Yet the trouble is, when I talk to people, so many people seem to think that government is a necessary evil. They don't think there's any way around this. Even one of my favorite writers, Thomas Paine himself, said that government is a necessary evil at the time when they were creating the type of documents that led to what we have now. And although I am very proud to be in the country that does have some semblance of individual rights, such as the ability to still own a weapon, to make many choices in terms of where I travel, not unlimited, of course. However, things are breaking down very quickly. You go into the DMV now and you have to put in your thumbprint as if you're a criminal. So I suppose you would say, if you believe that government is a necessary evil, that me having to supply my thumbprint to the DMV is a necessary evil. So in the modern time, you're seeing what's happening with the medical system turning into a tyrannical force that thinks it can actually put its chemicals and deadly, who knows what toxins, into your family and your children, in some cases without even your permission. Wow. And so that is necessary. So I would say that there is no evil that is necessary. And that is why my show is called In Evil. I think that we can eliminate the type of evil that I'm discussing, which is murdering other human beings, which is lying to other human beings, which is raping other human beings. These basic types of things that humans are doing can be stopped. We can stop doing them. Just like you could clean up a room and stop making such a mess, right? There's always going to be bad things that are going to happen. Yeah. At times, evil will keep trying to reemerge. However, we can end it. We can end it by understanding that it's wrong, right? And the trouble with government is it's wrong at the core. The word itself means to own your mind, to govern your mind, to manipulate you is the intention of government. There's no way it cannot do that. And what we're doing, essentially, if you think about it in common sense terms, is trusting an entity to take charge of us, to take responsibility for us. And then we become a number in that entity's library. And that is not working out well for us, folks. We can see how things are progressing around us, and we can see how it's not working. So clearly, government is not a necessary evil. But voting seems to be, in many people's mind, very important. In fact, maybe the only way to do things. Quite a few people that I respect, I still do, and love, get angry at me for not being a voter because they think that's the only way to change things. That's really the only way we can change things in many people's mind, is by voting. I showed a picture here of people standing in a line, waiting for their opportunity to have an opinion. Basically, to me, from my point of view, that's what voting is you're waiting in line with a billion people in front of you to maybe, possibly, conceivably say one tiny thing that might play into the final outcome. But it's so infinitesimally small and practically unrealistic in modern days with what we know actually goes on in terms of corruption that it's silly. It's silly to believe that this system of voting could work. I think the pigeons are doing better with just their random walking around. If you've ever watched chickens or pigeons eat, you think, how do they choose who gets which food? It just seems with the chickens or the pigeons almost like they're so dumb that they forget where the food was from time to time. Otherwise, all of them wouldn't get any, But like you might be saying, oh, that's natural selection. We don't want to go back to fighting for everything. But I think what we could do is debate things. What I think we could do is use the amazing technology we can to find out what everybody really does want and see how much we can come to finding a way to give everybody what they want, and I think that actually would be a lot more possible than we think, were we a lot more adept at working together. We can see, as I've pointed out in my presentation that I did for the funnel 2, the convergence, which was called Humanity's Most Powerful Weapon. I pointed out that when you look at the power of ants or the power of bees or the power of geese flying through the sky, you can see how in nature amazing things are happening when all the little individual beings all work together and do their part as a whole. They can accomplish great things as a group. We can do the same thing, and we can self-organize, and we can find better ways to organize ourselves. And we can actually make decisions largely on consensus if we work in smaller groups. And I think that's the key to organizing ourselves and coming up with ways of getting things done. But if you look around in the world and in the jobs you have and in things people do, you'll realize that many things are done without voting. And many times things are getting done in a fair way without voting. If we think about how trade happens before we had the Trade Commission or our government to alter it. Were there people who tried to swindle other people? Sure. But some of them might have ended up at the end of a shotgun too. People through time have found fair ways to make trades and fair ways to organize themselves without the modern systems that are in place. So it's a fallacy to believe that voting is the only fair way to make choices. As I'm saying, I think the pigeons are doing better than we're doing now in the current condition. Okay, here's the next lie we need to rip apart. Without violence, it's impossible to work together. Well, many people see the state of things in the world right now, and it seems pretty drastic. It seems pretty overwhelming. I admit I get the same feeling myself sometimes. There's so much military power. There's so many boundaries and borders and people that disagree. It's very difficult to imagine transitioning from the world we're experiencing now to the place that I'm describing that we want to be, where we combine our efforts, and we probably could spend more of our time on artistic endeavors. But the idea itself of being bitter or being negative does not serve us well often when we are working towards a challenge. If you say to yourself, I'll never learn how to ride a bike, do you think the chances of you learning how to ride a bike are quick? If you say to yourself, I'll never learn how to live in a world of peace, well, it's going to be that much harder for us to work towards a world of peace. So the first illusion I need to shatter, that violence is the only way to do things. We can see many things that we do and accomplish that are done with words and the power of words. In fact, as I've pointed out in past presentations, propaganda is one of the most powerful weapons of warfare. And propaganda almost always takes place well before a war begins. It's part of what it takes to convince people to fight in the first place. So what if we were to recognize that war at the propaganda stage and not let it get to the violent stage? Well, that would require us being aware of what's happening and being able to discern propaganda when it comes at us. And I think the way to do that is to look deep within ourselves and to understand that this is the concept, again, of natural law. And when we form together with other human beings that understand this basic reality that we live in, that there is right things to do, right? And that's almost anything. But the wrong things, the evil things, are when we destroy other people's freedom or other humans, or, if there's other entities like humans, we might as well take the same approach with animals as much as possible, right? But if you're starving, I'm not saying don't eat. You want to survive. That's the goal here. We want to survive. We want our children to survive and thrive. And the more violent, the harder it is going to be for anyone to survive. So it actually goes, the less violence there is that's happening, the more possibility of survival and thriving on this planet, not the opposite. So I will admit that given the situation we're in with all the weaponry in place and all the boundaries and borders and things, belief systems in people's heads, it's not going to be easy to make the transition without violence. That being said, we don't need the violence, and that's not the only way. The more powerful we are right now at connecting with one another and forming teams and doing a really good job of educating others. Any school you can imagine is going to require more than just one person educating people. We're going to need to work in a cohesive pattern and do this in a more effective way. That's the way. If you think about battles, are they going to happen with just random helicopters flying in any direction? No. To make an effective battle, there's a plan, right? And that's what we need in this war towards freedom, is an effective plan. And that's going to require a higher level of working together, as I'm saying. So we can shatter this silly idea that we need violence, and that's the only way. The only way. And it's not the best way forward. So let's seek a better way, right? Why would we choose the most faulty way? That wouldn't make sense. Well, here's one thing that holds people back. They have this idea in their head that if we started working towards individual empowerment and we started working away from having a government, that we would be overrun by foreign enemies, that people from China and Russia would just come take over our country and they would own us. And, well, is that possible? Is that one thing to consider? Is that fear a realistic fear? I have my doubts how realistic that fear is. Obviously, we're not going to just change to a world of anarchy overnight, and they're going to all realize, oh my gosh, people in America are now anarchists. Let's go get it. That's not the way realistically things are going to go down. What we're talking about is educating people on right and wrong, on creating stronger ties with our community of people that care about freedom and protecting one another and ensuring our future. A lot of that is, like I'm saying, learning self-defense, understanding weapons, understanding what weapons are in the world and what weapons our neighbors might have. And the more we work together on understanding all these things, the more information we can gather and the better prepared we can be for the possibilities that someone does try to come and get us. However, we need to start with what's right, not with what we're afraid of, right? If we start with what we're afraid of, we end up with the situation we're in now, where people all lose their individual power because some big gangster comes and says, don't worry, I'll take care of you. However, at a certain point, we have to take back the power as individuals. And there is some scary things that could happen on that path, right? But this idea that we're going to be overrun by people from other countries is kind of silly. It's really pretty silly. There's a lot of people, more people in this country with weapons than there are in any other country. And many people are quite ready to deal with any invaders. And if we work together, it would be simple. And if you think about history, the whole story goes with the British and the king being swatted out of this country by people running around in the trees, just your average farmer, right? And ragtag groups of whoever Paul Revere could grab, right? So it was a ragtag groups of people fighting for their life and managed to turn around the biggest power in the world at the time. And this is not the first time in history if we care and we have the will and the strength to want to live, we can do it. It's up to us. But again, this would require us having a higher level of working together. So we wouldn't be able to just throw away all of our resources, right? We wouldn't want to just do that. I don't want to just blow up the government. I've never suggested that. I don't think that's a good idea. I don't want to be quoted as saying that. That's not something I think is a good idea. In fact, if you look in the picture, the biggest enemies we've ever seen have been within. Enemies within. You know, we've never found the true story completely, 100%, what happened on September 11th, or what really happened behind the bombing at in Hawaii by the Japanese that started World War II. You know, like, what is the actual Pearl Harbor? You know, there's a lot of interesting and compelling evidence that shows that these things were planned from inside our own government. So obviously that is a bigger concern than being overrun by these random foreign enemies that are going to come fight the most armed people in the world. It's just not a realistic concern. And it's not really the thing we need to be thinking about or worrying about. And yet, you know, people take that concern way too seriously. So some people really think, like I said, you can't have peace without violence, that's the only way to get there. But we have words. And if you put the S in front of word, you get sword. There is no more powerful weapon than our voice, other than our united voice. You know, and that's what I was saying is humanity's most powerful weapon is our unity. Imagine if we're all saying with one voice, no, very clearly to people that try to do the wrong thing. Those people that try to do the wrong thing get eliminated very quickly. And then we end evil, right? Because everybody's doing what's good. They're protecting the future of other human beings. They're protecting the future of life itself. And they're protecting the ideal of what's right. So you can have peace. We see it. We've seen it many times in the world. There have been places and times, and there still are, where we have peace and people do work together. And we don't necessarily need politicians to do it. I guarantee it. You know, people think that without government, without all this structure, we couldn't fix the roads, right? But I've seen roads in places where there is no government, you know, where people maintain their own roads. And some people are quite good at it. And when you look at all these people on the one side of the picture here who are actually doing the work of maintaining the roads, you ask yourself, do these people know how to maintain the roads? Are they going to forget how to do their job and the things they've learned how to do? Could they not teach someone else how to do the parts of their job? And do they actually require these guys on the other side of the picture in the suits and ties to do their job? What part of their job really requires, the money? So we couldn't put money together to get something done that we needed because it was important to us. If half of our money and energy of our whole life wasn't being stolen outright by politicians, think about how wealthy we would be. And think about how nice the roads we could build in front of our own house or in our own neighborhoods or in our own streets, especially if we work together. You don't think we could hire a company to come pave a road for us? You don't think a company would form if there were lots of people that wanted to hire people to make roads, right? And how would we make rules without politicians? You know, we couldn't have common sense without politicians, folks. They're the only ones that have common sense, right? If you look at politicians, you can see the most common sense things happening every day, right? They do common sense things like building roads, right? Well, if you really ask yourself who's doing the work, you look at these two pictures, you'll realize that one of these answers is very silly, and the other one makes a lot more sense. The people that are going to build the roads are going to be the people that know how to build roads. And the people that are going to pay them to build the roads are going to be the people that have money to pay them. It's all a question of us putting our mind and intention and will where we want it and what we want to get done. And that's how things are going to organize. Right now, we're putting our mind and intention and will in losing the responsibility and ownership for where roads should go, or how they should be named, or what numbers should be put on them, or how we should take care of animals around those roads. And so what we have is a very irresponsible and closed-hearted system that really doesn't care very much about you and your personal needs. And that's why it costs you so much for gas. And many places, they even toll you just to drive to work. You know, that's some evil shit. when you think about it. We don't need politicians to build roads. We need road workers to build roads. But without government, who would take care of the homeless people? I don't know about you folks, but when I'm driving around the state I live in, the situation has gotten far worse, and it seems to be getting worse by the day. And as far as I've been around, and I spent quite a bit of time actually with homeless people, I've talked to homeless people. I've been a lot closer to homeless people than most, and there's a long story behind that I'll tell in another presentation. But my point being, they are not being taken care of. And in fact, I've seen an inside look at it myself, where working in a city as a maintenance man, the police basically pick up all the homeless every week or two and make them move down the block while they clean the street out. And then the homeless come back and then they kick them out again. They give them tickets. They have to go to court. They come in the courthouse. They got to deal with these tickets. They basically tax and fine people that have no money and no house and no way to make money. And I'm not saying all those people are perfect and some of them aren't drug addicts, but I'm just saying the system does nothing but kick you when you're down over and over and over. The people that help the homeless tend to be churches that feed the homeless. In most cities I've been in, that do an effective job of it, requiring any kind of housing, are either nonprofits or churches. And nonprofits and churches make a good example of showing how we can work together, and how people that do share the same heart or ideals, which should be our core values, as taking care of other people's. Imagine if people who cared about freedom and natural law got together and created a homeless shelter, right? Then that would show other people that it's possible to care for other human beings using the ideals that we recommend. So part of this is an opportunity for us to teach others how things can get done. And I'm not saying you need to go out and bring homeless people into your house. That might not be such a good idea. I've seen that done and it doesn't always pan out so well. But should you try to help people? Yes. If you know one particular person who's on the verge of becoming homeless and there's something you can do in their life to encourage them and they're going to accept that and they're going to work hard, then do that, right? Care about others. We do need to care about our community, but we need to care about people who return the love and care we give with that similar love and care, and not, just throw our money at just anyone, because some people are honestly too far beyond our help oftentimes. And you never know how that is. I'm not going to say I always do, but it's going to take effort from all of us. And I think the churches and the nonprofit agencies are a good example to show us how things can be done. And they do not require government. They actually have always relied on volunteers and people giving them money, volunteers and giving them money. So we don't need government to deal with the homeless. In fact, when the government takes care of the homeless, it looks like this picture I showed here. They basically treat them pretty terribly. They throw away their stuff and kick them around. And I'm not saying every person in government has that mentality. Many of them do care or want to care, but they're misplaced. Within a system of mind manipulation, how can you ever create a better world or environment for other people if you convince people that you don't need to care about the homeless? It's not your problem. We all need to care about everybody in our community, because anybody in our community that starts to have mental problems or drug problems becomes a threat to the rest of us. And we need to keep an eye on that, right? And try to nurture those people before they get to that point. Now that so many people are at that point and gone beyond, we're in a rough situation. There's not going to be an easy transition from here to there. But that doesn't mean we don't try, and that doesn't mean we don't work in that direction. And that's even more the work and even more the reason why we're going to, like I said, have to work together. So that illusion should be shattered. So a lot of people believe that the only way to make change in the world is to vote in a better leader. And yet we look back at history, picture of leader after leader, all who have done terrible things and who have not brought about the change that all of us seek. We do not see a steady increase of things getting better over the years through time with all these leaders. We actually see a degradation of individual rights. And many people have drawn conclusions and shown us how these people in power often are connected by bloodlines and family and part of the same occult, deeper manipulators and psychopathic slave trade mafias that are crimes they propose to prevent, which they don't. What they do is instill in your mind fears to keep you afraid and keep you from recognizing the real enemy, which is the same faces that are proposing to be your friend. So what we need to do is stop believing in this lie about government is here to protect us, because it really doesn't. It never has, and it never will, because it really has no way to care about us. Because like this cartoon character of Superman, Superman actually had a conscience, right? And it's kind of a fun idea, the superhero idea, because a Superman does have human eyes and human heart, right? They just have super abilities, right? But a government doesn't have a heart or a soul or a mind. Therefore, it actually cannot care about you. It actually does not even have the capability to care about you. So when people come to understand that this is not going to be ever the best way to protect yourself. In fact, many of the things, if we look through history, government has hurt many people under its own protection. Thousands and thousands of people have been hurt. And how many have actually been protected? It's hard to even quantify that anyhow, because many people have. Now, for people who've fought in military and who family have been in military, and they feel this pride for that protection that their family members or themselves have provided or offered. And although the intention to protect others was there, so often we see that the people in power manipulate those who are in the field and use them for their means. So I'm not saying there never has been good people trying to protect us, because obviously there have, and I would suspect the mind of the majority of people entering these institutions are trying to do the right thing. However, we need to understand that as long as we're working for people that are manipulating us and they have the power and they call the shots, we cannot just blindly follow. You don't need police to trust you if you have teams of people that are well armed and trained together, right? And look at this picture of the old days where I've had people tell me when I try to describe the concepts and the ideals of anarchy, or the idea of that we don't need government. And someone would say to me, I've had them say this to me multiple times, oh, that would be just like the old days with the gangs of New York, like the movie. See, people are very impressed by these movies. But even in the example of this movie of the gangs of New York, you see how people, even though it's a fictional story, it shows people self-organizing into these gangs, right? To protect their area or their idealistic view of things, right? And then we see on the other side of this picture, the police and the military all wearing the exact same costume and being united under a force that has no leader, that has no head, other than, these politicians that we spoke of, these corrupted people that are doing the bidding of the deeper layers and levels of manipulators. So what's worse, really? Us forming gangs with our friends and protecting our neighborhoods, or huge gangs that are owned by the one world order that walk the whole earth and tell us all what to do, right? So the only way to break up the big monster is to have lots and lots of little ones. So it's actually the opposite of the way most people think, and kind of the same idea with guns. If we had nobody with guns, then one person with guns can rule us all. However, if we all have guns, no one can rule. So the important thing here to recognize is that the gangs are really the opposite of what people have been taught. The gangs are not what you've been told. The gangs are what's owning us now, and the mafias are what's owning us now. That is the people in charge, are the gangs and mafias. And we need to work, not letting those gangs and mafias rule us in the future. And the way we can do that is by educating one another the importance of individual choice and the importance of understanding the concept of natural law. And most importantly, at this moment in time, learning to work together. But how can we work together if our hands are tied? We don't have any money and we don't have any time. And we're stuck working our butt off 8 hours a day, all the time, 40 hours a week or more, just trying to make ends meet, just trying to put food on the table. So, we need to put our money away in the banks, otherwise they're not safe, and we'll starve, right? But the truth is, that's the illusion. That's what people believe that, everything depends on this money, and that everything depends on us keeping this economy going. However, the real truth is that our food comes from the ground. It's mostly has to do with growing food. Even if you want to eat animals, you still have to grow food to help feed the animals and take care of the land that you have the animals on that you're going to eat, or learn to hunt. But that still requires, and is best done in teams and groups and tribes. Everybody working alone when trying to collect food could be not only dangerous, but very disastrous, right? So the banks and the money seem to create this system of structure. However, we've seen, if we look back in early America, we can see that there were periods of time and places where there were lots and lots of people farming and being ranchers and sharing goods and trading goods and keeping their money in various methods of storing money, right? All through time, people have stored money in various methods. Everything's expensive. Everything costs money. How do we deal with that situation? Well, again, I'm bringing it back to this teamwork thing in every one of these situations. Because if you look at each of these problems under the lens of you making a connection with another person that shares your ideals and that shares your understanding of right and wrong, that there is an objective morality in this world, then you begin to have a way to trust one another on a level that most people don't trust. And that trust is worth more than money. And so much can be accomplished with that trust. And eventually, people have figured out how to manage some of this, current currency that's being spread around, this evil currency, will also come to the aid. But first, we need to understand, everybody needs to understand the deeper understanding of the principles behind the situation. And when the situation of morality is well understood, the money, the trade will flow in the direction it needs to flow. That will be part of our natural process of survival. So, do you need to figure out a way to make money to get food tomorrow? Probably. But if we work on meeting other people that are into farming and growing food, reaching out to other people that have connections, that care about freedom, you'll find that these things are easier. Maybe you can find a room to stay somewhere with a freedom-loving person who will give you a little discount because they love that you spend all your time working for freedom, right? You get special deal. If you're out there doing the right thing, the universe may come to your aid. So I've noticed in my life, things have always been working out. I'm not rich. In fact, if you got some way to help me with some donations, you can check out my website. I could much appreciate it. I need to upgrade my computer. I'm in bad shape financially, but I have had help in the past. In fact, the microphone I'm talking on right now was a donation from Funnel One Conference, and I much appreciate the person that gave me that donation. So saying you're too poor and using that as an excuse is not an excuse. I did not have the money to get started on my podcast when I did. I started with a somewhat leap of faith, and I just managed to work it out and pay one more month and another month and getting through. And I'm still pulling it off. So if my poor self can do it, then you can too. There's always a way. If there's a will, there's a way. And it's going to be a lot easier if you have help. So, trying to make a good connection with somebody else who cares about these things is a great idea. And that's why I'm talking about the untapped power of teamwork. It's going to help us with every one of these problems. It's going to help us solve every one of these problems. Here's another one we need to get past. Schools. Do we really need schools, folks? Do we really need schools to teach children? Is that the only way to teach children? Well, I know for sure that spending time in nature is one thing children will learn immensely. And spending time with each other and playing. Playing is actually nature's built-in teacher. And nature, as I have always described it, is the living Bible. And if you think about what's being taught in school, it often isn't the most practical skills that kids actually need. What the kids actually need is your time and attention and love. And more than anything, school takes them away from our time and attention and love. And we're out working so hard to get that money that we are stripped away from our ability to spend more time with our children and give them more love. And then they're lacking in certain things and traumatized as they grow up and then we repeat that cycle. So the other way we can teach children is by working together, by mothers talking to other mothers, by making play dates, by homeschooling from the time children are young, as soon as we can, by helping create curriculum for other people's children, by creating videos and books for other people's children, as some people in the freedom movement have done. And you can get involved in this. Maybe you don't speak on presentations. Maybe you don't like to make podcasts, but maybe you can make a kid's book that explains natural law or explains freedom. These things need to be taught to children. So we see the picture of the children in school. This was me with my head on my desk. I hated it. I could feel the tyranny. I could feel the people telling me what to do constantly and not giving me the freedom to learn on my own. It's not the best way for kids to learn, standing in lines and being put in rows. Kids will always learn much better and faster using the symbols of nature, standing in circles, spending time with the irregular surfaces and ground and nature offers will make stronger bodies and stronger minds, and is the cure. Okay, we got to shatter the illusion of religion. I was saying before, some of the only people that I've seen that do an effective job of helping the homeless are churches. So I'm not saying they're all bad. However, when we're preaching dogma and convincing people of miracles or fantastical stories, eventually that's not going to end up well. There's going to be problematic issues with that. So what is it that really keeps a person honest or really keeps a person doing the right thing? Because honestly, I've met people that claim to be atheists that live a much more honorable life and a much more moral life than many people I've met who claim to be religious or part of churches. So being part of a church or a religion does not make you a good person. And being a good person does not require that you're part of a religion or a church. So they're obviously unnecessary things. And when we think of monks spending time meditating, what is the point of meditating? And that so many times we look at these ideas of shamans or teachers or spiritual evolved people, and they have this incredible ability to go within, to spend a lot of time by themselves. And so where is the true mystery? Where is the true answers? And the real church is within. And that is what the alchemy teachers of alchemy are all about. And that is what all ancient teachings are, is that the real church is inside. And your only religion that you need to follow is your own, the one inside that teaches you what's right and wrong. That when you make a mistake and you feel bad about it and your guilt comes, you realize, I made a mistake. I need to relegate myself better, Like religion it works within, but not without. You don't want other people to own your morality. You want to own your own morality and know it so deep within, like the monk who's meditated, that you have no doubt about what you know is right. And that actually is your power, is knowing what's right and being able to follow through with that knowledge. See, people want to convince you have power, and those are always the people that want to have power over you. Government wants to convince you that you don't have power, so it can have power over you. Religious doctrine was in many cases sculpted and written to have power over you by controlling your thoughts, by convincing you of miracles. People that fought wars want to convince their soldiers that they need to give up their lives. And so they want to convince them that the leader has all the power and that you don't have power. When the truth is that when we hold hands together, metaphorically, when we stand together strong, then we do have the power. And really, how do we get there? How do we get to the point where many people are strong, holding strong together about what's right? Well, they all need to be educated about what's right and what the problems are. So it's really about educating people about the problem. And that process, as I've said before, is very difficult to do alone. I've been trying for quite some time on my podcast, and I'll tell you, it can be lonely. But when you reach out and you start making the connections, the opportunities start popping up and you start meeting the other people. But let's look a little bit at a big historical event. Is an individual powerless? Can we think of people in history that have proven that wrong, that have shattered this illusion, that as an individual you can't do anything about these problems in the world, that you can't make a difference? Well, I'm fairly certain that there have been some very influential people that we can point to in history that prove that one person can make a huge difference, and that one person can affect many other people. In this picture, we see throngs and throngs of people at the government, Washington, D.C., I believe, because they followed Martin Luther King there. And there's been other times in history, I think of Gandhi, when one person encouraged and led many people. And there's been times when that's happened in a bad way too. But we know it's possible. Again, well, how else do we need to prove it? By look at what's actually happened. One person can make all the difference. So it is up to you. It's up to each of us to try to be that person and quit giving up and making justifications and claiming that you can't make a difference and that it's not your problem. See, do you want to be one of these zombies? You want to be one of the living dead? Because that's actually what the powers that be in the world, the controlling elite, want you to be. They want you to not take responsibility for things. They want to let you to think it's okay to leave it to someone else. See, what's wrong with zombies is they can't think as a group. They're easy to destroy because they're dumb. They don't know how to work together. They don't know how to say, hey, well, if both of us, we might be able to get them better. Or what if, I catapult you? They're just dumb. They're just all moving on their own stupid path. And that's the way we've been going as a society for far too long. And so I hope this slide embarrasses us a little bit. I feel embarrassed by our modern day people and those of us who claim to be freedom activists and haven't done enough yet. We got to work together better. We got to unite and quit being just zombies, like out there just moving one slow step at a time. There is a reason for things that are happening around us in the world. It's not just any time, it's a very important time in history. Every moment counts. This reality that you're experiencing is here for a reason. You're here to experience it for a reason, and it's an incredible, amazing opportunity. So I don't know why people want to go forward in life and act like it's not exciting and there's no meaning in it and it doesn't matter. What else could it be but meaning and purpose? These are the main things that drive people. And if you really look deeply and do the meditation, like I showed the picture of the monk, and go deep into yourself, you will find the meaning, and you will find that feeling good is not all that matters. That actually what really makes us feel good is when we get something done in life, when we accomplish something very difficult, like when somebody climbs a mountain. It's not all fun and games. A lot of it's stressful, and they're sweaty and they're tired, and they push themselves to the limit. And when they reach the top, then they get that good feeling, right? So you don't just get good feelings from not doing meaningful things. If you think about your own life and your own experience, you'll see what I mean. All the best things in life come from putting out a lot of effort and a lot of energy and caring a lot. And the more you care and the more energy you put out, the more amazing things you can make happen. And so when we start to share the same purpose and the same meaning, what is not possible? That's what you need to ask yourself. What is not possible if we really start working together? Everything is just chance. There's no such thing as God. Many people believe this, that everything that happens is just some sort of galactic accident, and we're just sort of falling into this reality one moment by moment. Things are barely forming right as they're happening, and there's no such thing as God. And that's partly due to all the indoctrination from movies. That's partly due to all the dogma from religions that have tried to convince people of all these ridiculous notions, when in fact what I'm calling God is reality itself. It's the emotions, the feelings, the consciousness that you're dealing with right now, the experience you're having, all that is, everything it is, you and me and this computer and everything around it and everything inside of it. That is what I'm calling God. And so if you're saying reality doesn't exist, then this is just a simulation. I would still say that the simulation itself is what I would call God. It is the reality, is the fabric of what we're experiencing. So you can't deny the reality of what we're experiencing. So if you want to define God as some other silly thing besides that and say you don't believe in that, then I get it. But what I'm talking about is the actual reality and experience that we're having, which has real consequences. When I reach my hand out and hit something, it hurts, or something happens, There are reactions to every action. Everything is not just chance. Chance is just another word for, what does the book say? I forgot, but there is no chance. Chance is just perception. Everything happens with purpose and reason in this reality, and it's built on intelligence. And observation and deep meditation can prove these points. So don't give up. It's not over. Even though the situation seems really bad and things are seemingly falling all apart around us. And sometimes, people want to give up because they think, well, it's not my problem, or someone else is going to take care of it, like I said in the other slides. But that type of mentality is a justification, and it is an excuse. And I want to encourage you to be very honest with yourself about the excuses and the justifications that the mind will make, because many of them are due to our past traumas and the things we've been indoctrinated with. And we can separate from those silly thoughts and recognize that, forming unity with other people, focus on the same morals, and taking action together is something within our grasp that we can do. And having the mentality of giving up or thinking it's too hard only takes away from that possibility of how quickly we can get that job done, and the possibility of shattering the illusions that we can't work together and that we can't be a force for good. I'm telling you, friends, it is possible to change things one step at a time, but we have to start with one step. And that first step is finding the other freedom, people that care about freedom in your neighborhood, in your county, and connecting with them and getting together with them and starting to have discussions and communication and finding out if you can trust these people. And when we can build trust with people, one person or two people or three people, keep it small and simple, then we can get more done as groups, and we can lean on one another when we need help, and we can help one another when we have extra to give. So that's your goal. If you take my advice, that's what I hope. And I'm looking for people always that are interested and curious on helping with End Evil. You can look on my website, endevil.life, and look on my contact page, and you'll find my email address there. Thanks so much for listening to my presentation. Thanks for having me as part of the Shattering the Illusion conference, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.